name is Cassie, and this is the Mystery Meeting Chamber. Thank you for coming on by. Today, I would like to talk about the fallout and death of actor Johnny Lewis and the murder of Catherine Davis. I'm going to give a little bit about Catherine Davis first before I jump into Johnny Lewis's life. Catherine Davis was born and raised in Texas, but in 1950 she moved to California to attend school at UCLA. After graduating, she got jobs in the publishing world. In 1958, she was married and had her first child with her husband. They bought this grand house that was almost like an oasis, like a getaway from the Los Angeles area. Later in the 1980s, she was divorced. Her daughter was now grown and on her own, and she had this beautiful home all to herself. So, in a pure empty nesting kind of way, she turned it into a bed and breakfast. She would have, upcoming stars, different actors, directors, writers come to this little oasis, this safe haven place where they could just, release whatever emotions that they have built up going on, find some peace and quiet and safety, just out of all of the hustle and bustle of Hollywood and Los Angeles. She's described as being very lively and sparkling and caring and such a motherly figure. She would have open arms and a shoulder to cry on for anyone that needed it. She was a very loved person. Johnny Lewis was born on October 29th in 1983 to parents Michael and Devonna Lewis in Los Angeles, California. He is actually the middle child of the family. It is said that their family was a Jewish-orientated household, but the parents were actually also into Scientology. They had reached the highest level of Scientology that they could, the operating theon. At age 6, Johnny's mother started taking him to acting auditions. By the time he was 7, he landed his first role in a safety video. Shortly after this, he started getting different commercial roles before eventually leading a guest spot in an episode of Seventh Heaven. As he got older, he got little roles in Malcolm in the Middle, Judging Amy, and The Guardian. At the age of 18, Johnny finally had enough money that he felt like he could move out of his parents' home. And he joined some other actors in this place that was dubbed the Wilton Hilton in Hollywood area. He started racking up some more acting credits, including Malcolm in the Middle, Quintuplets, Raise Your Voice, The OC. Things were really starting to look on the up and up for him. In 2005, he started dating Katy Perry, so he was even more in the spotlight than before. It's actually rumored that a couple of her songs were written about their eventual breakup. In 2008, Johnny Lewis got the role that he is most known for as Kip Halfsack Epps on The Sons of Anarchy. He was on the show for 2 seasons when he told the creators that he was feeling uncomfortable with the amount of violence on the show and asked to get out of his contract. They did write him off in season 2 and gave him a hero's ending. A little side note right here, the creator of Sons of Anarchy actually would go on later to say on Twitter after these events unfold that he was not surprised by what happened, which is really interesting to look back on his time on Sons of Anarchy and leaving the show for too much violence. So Johnny Lewis heard about this magical oasis in the middle of Los Angeles called the Writer's Villa. And the Writer's Villa is owned by Catherine Davis. So he actually goes there for 2 months and loves it. He finds it so relaxing and peaceful, and he starts writing. He wants to become a writer, writing books and stuff. But he was dating someone that he had met on set at Sons of Anarchy, and they found out that she got pregnant. So he eventually left the villa to try to live with his girlfriend to raise their daughter together. Their daughter was born in April 2010. They were no longer romantically involved at this time, which led to him eventually moving out of this house and going through a very painstakingly long custody battle, which Johnny Lewis had lost. Johnny Lewis never returned to television after leaving Sons of Anarchy, but he did continue acting. He had some different indie credits and movie credits on his film history. In October of 2011, Johnny was taking a ride out on his motorcycle where he actually crashed and had to be taken to the hospital. They checked him over to make sure he didn't have a concussion. They said it was negative and he was actually okay to be released. However, shortly after this, his friends and family started noticing some strange behavior changes in Johnny, some kind of erratic and just bizarre behaviors. His father was getting worried about him, and he tried to schedule 2 different MRI appointments, but Johnny refused to go to them. Some of his friends in an acting class actually said he started talking in a vaguely British accent, and when they questioned him about it, he was just like, I don't know what you're talking about, or shrugged it off. Things start taking a real toll for the worst at the beginning of January 2012. On January 3rd, he was at his family's condo that he had purchased for them and decided to go out on a walk in his pajamas. And on his walk, he starts hearing signs of distress in one of the neighboring units and breaks in, but no one's there. Eventually, 2 men enter in the house. It's their house, and they question him, what are you doing in our house? Get out. And Johnny finds this glass bottle in the house, picks it up, runs, and hits them both in the head. This whole fight ensues. It rolls out onto the patio. There's 2 of him, and, there's 2 men and 1 Johnny Lewis. So they were able to overpower him and detain him until the police could show up. During this fight, though, it is said that he got about 17 blows to his head. Johnny was charged with burglary, trespassing, and assault with a deadly weapon. He was claiming self-defense because he broke into this house to try to help this woman who was screaming inside. But he was sent to lockup, and after 3 days of being there, they actually transferred him to the psychiatric ward. It turns out he was smacking his head repeatedly on a concrete wall, and they had to move him for his own safety. He stayed there for another 72 hours before his father was able to get him out on bail. His discharge paperwork actually said blunt head trauma and suicidal on it. Johnny went back to his parents' house for his own safety and well-being. His sister had said that he looked and acted like a wounded animal when he got home. While at his parents' house, he refused to let anyone near him or touch him. He became very sensitive to the lights in his house, running around, turning off all the light switches. He eventually went to the fuse box and just disengaged it, turned everything off. A few weeks after staying there, he attempted suicide by slashing both of his wrists. But for some reason, towards the end of January 2012, his family felt like he was okay to be on his own again. And he moved out and moved into a place in Santa Monica. On February 10th, Lewis was actually charged with a assault of a man. He was walking down a street outside of a yogurt shop and just completely sucker punches this guy randomly. He was let out on bail on a $20,000 bail. A couple days after getting out of jail, he went out into the Santa Monica ocean area, fully clothed, just walked into the water, and eventually had to be taken to the hospital for hypothermia. On February 18th, Johnny Lewis was charged and arrested again for another crime. He had broken into a woman's house, claiming that he thought it was one of his friend's houses and he was just trying to get into it. Again, he was let out on bail. Doctors had prescribed him medication for schizophrenia and bipolar, but it is thought that he actually wasn't taking them, or at least taking them on a constant basis. They thought that he might have been cheeking it, where you move the pill aside, try to drink water, and eventually spit it out later. Johnny Lewis's lawyer was trying to help him out and say that instead of getting jail time, let's try to get him some kind of psychiatric help. He did spend some time in Ridgeview Ranch, which is kind of like a drug therapy place, but they also do different psychiatric issues like psychosis. They have equine therapy, art therapy. It's a very high-end rehab place. Johnny's behavior actually started to really improve while being here. He wrote letters and emails to his family saying that, he was really feeling himself again, more clear-headed, and it really did seem like he was doing good, that maybe Johnny was becoming Johnny again. Johnny still had to face trial for the crimes with the first crime he did, with the breaking, entering, and the assault. But with his lawyer trying to get him a swapped sentence instead of a year in jail, if he could get a year continued at Ridgeview, it would do better for him. However, Johnny was convinced, no, it was self-defense. I'm not going to stay here for another year of my life. They're going to drop the charges. It was self-defense. And he fired his lawyer. And he got a year in jail. This jail, however, was overcrowded, and he was let out after only 6 weeks. On September 21st, 2012, he left the jail and checked himself into a hotel. His dad came to pick him up so he could get some fresh clothes and whatever he needed. And Johnny actually asked his dad if he could call Catherine Davis and see if he could go stay with her again, because he remembered how calm and caring she was and how good he felt being there. And his dad thought this was a great idea. It's an area that he is familiarized, and he talked very highly of staying there. And because he's not going back to Ridgeway, where he was already improving, like, why not give this a try? So his dad called up Catherine, and she was like, yep, absolutely. I'll have the same room that he had before all ready and set up for him. On the morning of September 26th, Johnny was seen pacing back and forth outside of his neighbor Dan's house. He was just wearing pants and shoes, no shirt, and just pacing strangely for about 15 minutes outside of their house before he eventually walks up to the door, knocks on the door. Dan opens and Johnny says, "Hi, I'm John, your new neighbor." And Dan responds, It's nice to meet you, John." And then they just stand there, looking at each other. And then Johnny Lewis just turns around and walks away abruptly. And Dan was like, "Okay, that was weird," and closed the door, goes back to his day inside. About 30 minutes later, Dan actually hears his wife calling out for him for help. He runs to find out what's going on, and she's pointing outside, and Johnny Lewis was actually outside their backyard where they had a house painter fixing up some stuff, and he was on top of him, just wailing on top of him, just hitting his face. There was blood all over the painter's face. Dan runs out, tries to pull off Johnny, but he's just so focused in on attacking this man, and he's pulling and yelling and telling him to get off. Then all of a sudden he just stops and then smacks Dan in the face. And he's in his 70s, he's not like this young sprout man anymore. But Dan gets back up. He does land a punch. He grabs a lawn chair and smacks it over Johnny's head. And this distracts him enough that him and his wife are able to grab the painter and, try to carry or lift him into the house. But as soon as Johnny realizes what's going on, he starts running after them. And they both three get inside, try to slam the door. Johnny's arm makes it through the arm crack, and they're just slamming the door, trying to, push his arm out, get his arm out. And the force of 3 people are slamming this door 4 times before Johnny retracts his arm. And then he just runs through the backyard and jumps over the fence and ends up back at the writer's villa. And they described it almost as if he had some kind of like abnormal strength or superpower or like Spider-Man, because he was just so focused, not affected to like any of the blows or anything that was happening to him. And then it was almost like he flew, like his feet weren't even touching the ground. It was like just parkouring, to get over this, out of their yard and over this fence. So the neighbors call 911 to explain what happens, and, they let them know that Johnny is over at Kathy Davis's house, the writer's villa. And it is thought it's at this point that Johnny attacks Miss Kathy. I'm not sure if it happened before, but they think it happened in between going to the neighbor's house and going back over that fence. So Catherine Davis was severely beaten up. There was blunt force trauma to her face. There was marks of strangulation, and it is said that the head trauma was so bad that probably after she had already died or was unconscious, they think that her head was stomped on. And then after killing Kathy Davis, Johnny then left her room and found her beloved cat and killed the cat, possibly with a hammer that they had found in the room, and left the cat in the bathroom. Johnny then somehow, either, and this part's unsure, if he made it out onto one of the upper patio decks or if it was on the roof, but whatever it was not ground level. He was up high, and he had fallen head first onto the concrete and probably died instantly from the fall because it was on his skull. In the autopsy report, there was a skull mostly on the left side going all the way, like mostly across his whole skull. When they were transporting the body, they did say there was some skin slippage because after he had jumped and fell in the driveway, due to the angling and speed of everything, he hit his head and slid down the driveway a bit. And because he was an actor or a celebrity and such a crazy event, most people in the media and in the world just thought it had to have been drugs. He had to have been, on some kind of hallucinogens or bath salts. This was the time where there was a Florida man who took bath salts and ate a guy's face off. That was a that's a really crazy story to go over in one day, maybe. But so they thought maybe he was on bath salts since he did such a horrendous crime. But in the autopsy reports, there was no drugs, there was no alcohol, there was nothing in his system. But unfortunately, that also meant that the medication that he was prescribed was also not in his system. We really don't know why Johnny Lewis did this. Was it a head trauma from the motorcycle accident and then having his head beat 17 times during this break-in and then smacking his own head against the wall? Did that initial accident cause some kind of brain issue and then it just kept getting worse and worse? Or was it some kind of psychosis? Psychosis is actually more common than a lot of people think. It is said that every 3 in 100 people will have at least one psychosis event happen to them. And a lot of people think psychosis and schizophrenia are the same thing. They can go hand in hand, but they are two different disorders. Kind of a good way to explain psychosis a little bit is a minor event that can happen is when you're thinking about bed bugs, or you hear someone has bed bugs and then you're laying in your own bed and then all of a sudden you just feel bugs crawling all over you even though there's nothing there. It's a sense of a different reality you're experience. It's like a minor psychosis. There are many different levels, and it almost seems like Johnny Lewis might have been in a psychosis episode. It tends to happen between the ages of 19 and 30, and at the time of this, Johnny Lewis was 28 years old, so he was right in that time frame. So if he was suffering from psychosis, it would make sense that when he was in Ridgeview, he started to improve because he was in an environment that wasn't stressful. It was super peaceful. He was getting, behavioral therapy, and that can help, that can really help. And as soon as he got out, it was, like an instant flip of a switch where now he has to figure out what he's doing with his life. And he still has these other pending charges too, and that stress level just made the psychosis come right back, which led to the event that happened. But yeah, whether it was the head trauma or psychosis or any other thing that it might have been, some people were like, oh, because he grew up in a household of Scientology and they don't typically believe in medicine and help, maybe he could have gotten help earlier in his life if it was something else. But his family really did, put their beliefs in Scientology aside and completely full-heartedly did everything they could to help their son. They were trying to get him MRIs. They told him to go into therapy and try to take medicine. They really did focus in on their son because it's their son, and Scientology aside, like, that didn't matter to them. Their son mattered to them. So I don't think it really had anything to do with Scientology or that upbringing of him that led to this. It definitely seems more of some kind of brain injury from the accident or psychosis forming in his life. But it doesn't seem like we'll never know, you know. It's it's a mystery. But Kathy Davis was a very loved woman, very highly thought of. So many people were affected by her loss. You know, she was there for them when they didn't have anything, and you know, she's gonna be she's very missed. She's very missed. And Johnny Lewis's friends and family, they miss, you know, their son and their friend, and really wish that they would have done more if when they saw signs, or you know, just could have been there for him more, and you know, maybe things would have turned out differently. But that's, you know, a bit of survivor's guilt in a sense. It's hard to hold on to those feelings, and it's even harder to let go of those feelings. But in any way, it was definitely a tragic loss of two loved souls. But that is all I have for the story of Johnny Lewis and Catherine Davis. I hope you all have a good day, and thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you again soon. All right, bye.